Hey, Andrew Malcolm here, Mortgage HQ. We're going to look at the 6 thinking hats in action, and then we're going to put that 7th property investor hat on after we've assessed some information. So taking the example of Rotorua, for example, what we want to do if we're assessing an area that maybe we're not 100% completely familiar with, even if we are, it's good to do it, is start researching the facts, population trends, long-term capital gains, new developments, suburb reports, accumulate lots of facts, and then that's going to help you, whittle down what is actually most important. Now, emotionally, how do I feel about Rotorua? Got a lot of really good memories about traveling there when I was younger. I know there's a lot of cool things to do in Rotorua. I also know, having played a bit of rugby down in Rotorua, there are negative connotations about Rotorua and about the socioeconomic side of things. So that's going to weigh on your decision-making process. Average incomes, things like that, and industry types. You got to feel. You got to assess how you feel about that situation and decide whether that's coloring your decision-making process or not. Now, looking at it from an optimistic point of view, it's obviously going to be higher yields in Rotorua than in Auckland because the prices are not as high and rental income proportionately is much better. Looking at Rotorua over the long term, one would expect that once tourism picks up, Rotorua has been a very strong centre for New Zealand and especially around tourism for a long time. You can expect and hope that it will bounce back and maybe come back even stronger. Ideas to consider for the future. There's a lot of potential with Rotorua, especially given that there's sort of economic changes, pricing model changes from hotels to say Airbnb, and there's a lot of really nice real estate views and access to amenities, and Rotorua is not that far away. So you can imagine that Rotorua might become a centre. Rich playground, a playground of the rich in the future, and maybe you could take advantage of that. The planning stages, probably if I'm seriously considering Rotorua as an option, first thing I probably want to do is start setting up filters and start researching for a couple of months, keeping spreadsheets of some select areas in Rotorua. Maybe I want to talk to a couple of existing property investors that I know own property there or have knowledge to start building up my base of knowledge. Judgment side of things, if I'm going to put my black hat on, I'm going to say, look, if the recession through anything to do with pandemic or lack of travel for the globe is going to hit Rotorua for a long time, do I want to buy just before there's a dip, or do I want to wait? And also because I'm more focused probably on development properties long term, I really got to assess if there's actual good return on cash invested in that development side of things in Rotorua. And I need to couple that with developing my cash flow side of my portfolio. There's a lot of things to consider. When you start pulling all of this information, you can start seeing where the gaps are, and I realize if I'm going to be buying property in Rotorua, I probably need somebody to find me some properties, whether that's agents or property buyers. I need to get somebody on my team. I need to make sure that I'm not going to auction for Rotorua properties because I'm not particularly that interested in going to visit properties unless I have them under contract, and I'm not patient enough to do all the due diligence that you should do before you do auctions. So I got to weigh up Rotorua as a potential opportunity, given that I'm really focused on the STAR principle of buying the quality properties only. I'm sure there's some good deals in Rotorua. It's definitely worth researching if your budget is capped and you can't buy in Auckland. No, that's my opinion. And personally, I'd probably rather choose Rotorua over Christchurch, for example, prefer something in the North Island. And I've been to Rotorua a lot more than I've been to Christchurch, so I've got that natural bias. So you can see the 6 hats and using the 7th hat is a good framework for assessing a lot of information quickly and without too much bias towards one hat. So if you've got questions, leave them in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Cheers.